Rush. I'm the lead visionary of City Edge Christian Church in Lakewood, Ohio, Cleveland. Yes, we can't spell. Apparently, this is why our public schools are rough. We're struggling a little bit. No, actually, this is Hebrew. There's no vowels in Hebrew, so we just simplified it for you. I keep it simple. I love coming back to New Hope because, during the summer, you go back to family reunions, right? You guys go back to family reunions. I go back to family reunions. And there's always the weird cousin or estranged uncle. I'm like that guy. When you guys come, you're like, who's this? Oh yeah, we kind of remember him. He's kind of odd. And so if you don't know what you're in for, buckle up. It's just a rough ride. It's just how it goes. Now, just to get to know me a little bit more, if you don't know me, I have 3 beautiful daughters and a smoking hot wife. And here's my $3. Yesterday we were actually at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and we got a picture. They were getting ready for their photo shoot. They had makeup brushes and stuff like that. They're so cute, aren't they? So that's my life, just cute girls everywhere, living the dream, surrounded by gorgeous ladies. And so we were there, we were getting the pictures taken and, kind of going about our day. And they're so sweet. I love those girls. They're like my heart and joy, and I just love to be with them, love hanging out with them, love just to see them grow up, love that God gave me them as gifts that I get to be a part of, walking with them. And now, does anybody else have kids? See, but there's this other part of kids, right? We remember that part, but then there's this other part of kids, when they get complainy and fidgety and cranky, and they're like, yeah, I want it now, yeah, no, I need that. And they start to hit each other and bite each other, and remember that part, right? Everybody's like, amen, preacher, brother. And my kids, there's nothing that brings that out in them so much like hunger, right? It's hunger. Immediately on the way back from that ride, taking pictures, had a good time, went to the art museum, played in the kids area, started to head back. As soon as we get in the van, it hit about noon, right? Hit noon, and immediately their thing went off. Whatever that hunger thing went off, and they're in 3-part harmony. Hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. I need food now, Dad. And my middle child, who's the middle child, and thinks they have to fend for themselves, right? Who's a middle child? I'm a middle child. You know what it's like. And it was the older ones, right? They can talk and they get whatever they want, but the younger one, they just cry, and everybody's like, oh, he's so cute. We gotta take care of the baby. And you're just in the middle, what about me? What about me? What about me? And this is how Aaliyah is, my 4-year-old. She's right in the middle, and she's 6, so she can't always say what she wants, so she's super passionate. And so on the way back home, she'll be like, I want food. I want food, Dad. Let's stop. I want to eat out. Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, and which is Chick-fil-A. And Aaliyah talk, Aaliyah-nese is Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A. And so we'll go home, and we have this rule, right, that you don't get in the fridge. Anybody who has a 6-year-old or younger, you just kind of have a rule. You have to ask to get in the fridge because there could be a mess, or food will come up missing, or you'll eat something that's poisoned somehow. I don't know how it got in the fridge, but it's in there, or whatever. And so you just have this rule, but my 4-year-old will not, no matter what we do, she just gets in there, rooting around. I hear things falling over, and she's trying to find food, and she'll be even though there's so much food in there, there'll be lettuce and tomatoes, right? There's food in there, just not the food she wants, right? She's expecting McDonald's French fries to come out of the refrigerator or something. And so in these moments, she's knocking things over, and I'm just like, honey, I got food for you. It's in here. Just wait a second. No, there's no food. Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A. She's just thinks we're going to not feed her, right? She thinks I'm going to die if these guys don't give me food. And it comes on so hard and so strong. Now, hunger has a funny way of doing that to us, right? We're all that kind of that way if we're honest. There's times when we haven't eaten in a while. We smell delicious popcorn. And the cafe is closed. Not my idea, by the way. And the popcorn was, not the coffee being not there. I'm as addicted as you guys are. I need that. All right, I'm twitching up here, even more than normal. And so when we don't have that hunger in there, we become this worse version of ourselves, just like our kids, right? We become this we get cranky, we get short. We're like, what about me? What about me? I need food now. Stop my Chick-fil-A. Whatever your Chick-fil-A is, you're I need it now. You remember Snickers commercials with Betty White? Anybody? Betty White, yeah. I mean, it's like that Snickers commercial where the hey, you're playing like Betty White out there. Well, that's not what you're girlfriend says. Like it's just like this. We become this worse, cranky version of ourselves when we're not fully satisfied, when we're still hungry, when we're still craving something outside of ourselves. The definition of hunger is to have a strong desire or craving for. I put it this way: hunger is the constant reminder that we desire or crave something outside ourselves to sustain us. Hunger is that constant desire, that constant craving in us that we need something out of us to sustain us, give us substance, give us just completion, right? And we have this in us, and we create an appetite for ourselves. We eat, and just like our bodies have those cravings, and we stuff our mouths, we eat stuff that's good and bad, our soul does the same thing. Our spirit has these deep cravings that can't be satisfied unless we eat. They can't be fulfilled. We have these deep, dark hunger, or deep-seated hunger in our hearts that needs to be fed. We need something outside ourselves to sustain us, don't we? Now, in New Hope, you've been going through this series called Closer to God, where you've been on this kind of journey to talk about the pathways to God. See, the thing about this journey with God, right, that we know that God loves us, and he loves us so much that it wrecks our world in a beautiful way. It's this thing that God loves us so much that he gave his life for us, that no matter how far, how broken, how messed up, how jacked up, misfit, no matter what sins we've done, that God says he loves us so much. And it's in response to that love that God changes us. It's that God loved us so much that we love others. So on this journey, there's nothing more missional, going on mission to reach your friends, than first experiencing the love of God, drawing close to him, because then people naturally see the love of God in and through you. It becomes a natural thing. You're not forcing it. You're not just talking about it. But you had an experience with God. You recognize the truth of God, who God is and what he's done in your life, and there's nothing more powerful than sharing that with others. So you're going through this journey to get close to God, so you really have that depth. So then when you go out on mission, when you go out to love, when you go out to reach people far from God, that it's just this natural outpouring. And so this summer we're drawing close. We're saying, God, help us draw close to you so we know who we are, that we can hear your voice, that we can be filled up by you, so we can then go out and love others beyond reason like you love us. Now, I about did this again. I did this first service, lost my page. The word, so today you guys have been talking about different pathways, different practices, different things you can do to posture yourself to be close to God, to have this pathway, this connection. And today I'm talking about fasting, which is everybody's favorite topic, because everybody loves not eating, right? Yeah. I love eating. So let's just be clear. I love eating. I just think I have a tapeworm. It doesn't stick. Okay? It's just God's blessing on me. And so in the word fast means to abstain from all kinds of food and drink, especially as a religious observance, as this religious thing. Now, before I unpack what fasting is a bit, first let's talk about what it's not. That video did a great job, isn't it? Of saying this is what the kind of people we've bumped into throughout time who fast. They have different reasons. They're kind of all over the place, and some of them are funny and kind of ridiculous. So let's kind of unpack that really, really fast. Pun intended. Fasting isn't about, let's tell you what it isn't about. Fasting isn't about shedding a few pounds, right? You'll talk to somebody, and they'll be like, hey, yeah, I'm fasting, I'm looking to lose some weight. I'm like, that's not fasting, that's dieting. Your motives is to get skinny, not to seek God. This isn't the next Adkins or South Beach or gluten-free or vegan or whatever you might be, right? That's not fasting, that's just a diet. You're just dieting. So sometimes fasting people will say it, but that's just dieting. And fasting isn't a way to save money. My wife, we were talking about this, my wife told me a story of she was eating with a friend in high school, and they said, yeah, I'm fasting, to save money. I'm going to take the money that I have and go buy something, That's not fasting, that's budgeting. Let's be clear on what that is. That's not fasting, that's just where you're spending. I'm not spending it here, I'm going to spend it here. It's a choice. It's what you do with that, with your money. And then I had this other experience, kind of strange. I took over a youth group, and they did this 48 hour fast. So they kind of had like a lock-in, and they raised money from people in the church to then give it away to people. And I'm just like, that's strange. Like, the Bible doesn't talk about that at all. Fasting is not a fundraising method. It's to connect to God. See, fasting has been co-opted in all these different and strange ways, and so many people have used it for things that aren't of God. Another thing is fasting isn't just for the spiritual elite, and fasting isn't about gaining man's favor. Actually, Jesus talked extensively on these things. Like, we think that it had to be the elite, the best of the best. But Jesus actually, when he talked to his followers, he talked to all of them, and he said this in his teaching. This is a teaching to a large group of followers, to a sermon that's very, prominent when you think of Jesus. And he says this to all his followers. He says, when you fast. Notice he says, when you fast, not if you fast. Not that we don't have to fast. Like, I'm not here saying today, if you don't go fast, you're sinning and God doesn't love you. No, like, fasting is something totally different. It's something that we get to. It's not about religion. It's about, like, relationship with God. It's about connecting deep to the Father. And so he says, he says, when you fast. He's saying, giving you the keys, like, if you're going to do this is how you drive the car. Like, if you're going to do this fasting thing, don't do it like this. He says, don't look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others that they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your heads and wash your face, so that it will be obvious to others. So it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to their Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Now, at this time that Jesus was ministering and doing his things, the Pharisees, which were this religious group, high religious group, which was all about presence and being like above reproach. They wanted to be the people that everybody looked to as the pious people, the people that were better than everybody, that kept to the law and kept to all this truth. And so they did this practice of fasting twice a day. It's mentioned several times in the scriptures, like, hey, the Pharisees, they are twice a week, not twice a day, fast twice a week. So there's 2 days a week that they would always fast. And they were just known for this. And they fasted, scholars believe, on Monday and Thursday. Anybody have any idea why? Who wasn't at first service? Rob. Anybody have any idea why? Well, see, Monday and Thursday were the days the market was the busiest. The market where you'd go to buy food, you'd go to buy meat, the place where trade was happening. And so the Pharisees would go to the marketplace, and they would be like, look how religious I am, look how pious and how much devoted I am to God and how feeble you guys are. If you were really devoted to God, you would do like we do on Mondays and Thursdays and fast before everybody with all this delicious food right in front of me, and I never eat it, right? This is what they did. I just imagine this is what they did, right? Like, that wasn't a direct correlation, in case you're funny. That's just Kevin's imagination of what a Pharisee does. See, the Pharisees wanted to be seen, and Jesus just says, like, if that's what you want to be seen for what you're doing, you've already got your reward. If you wanted to seem like you're better than everybody and you got it all together and you're all right and all good before people, you got that. See, fasting isn't about gaining man's favor. It's about seeking God. Jesus tells them to do it in secret, to do it away from people. If you really want to seek me, if you really want to connect to me, do it. Don't do it for the favor of man, for favor of man, but do it to connect to me. Another thing, fasting isn't about gaining God's favor. Now, some of you will be like, really? Yeah, it's like, and what I mean by that is fasting isn't like I can put God in an arm lock, or that last little clip of the hunger strike, right? Like, I am going to sit here and not eat until you do what I'm asking you to do. Like, I want this in my life. God's not in, you can't twist God's arm to get him to do what you want. God's already gives you all his favor. He says, like, you are my child, I love you, and I have good gifts for you. He's a gift giver. He wants to give you good things. He wants to give you grace. He even wants to give you the desires of your hearts when your heart aligns with his. So he's like, I got good gifts for you. And it's not about what I can get from him. It's about connecting to him. Now, there's times all through the Bible that talks about fasting, whether it's individual fastings or corporate fastings, and there's this looking back, like they're mourning something that happened. But their mourning leads them to draw close to God. and they're not knowing. There's other times in the Bible where it's talking about they're seeking God's leadership. Like they're seeking God, what is next? And so they draw close to God. They're saying, like, I have this deep hunger for you to show up, and I don't know what's next. So I'm just going to draw close to you and ask you what's next. See, these are the things that fasting isn't. Like these things that we have up here, fasting isn't about shedding a few pounds. It's not about dieting. It isn't about saving money and fundraising, although, like, I don't think it's wrong if you do lose a few pounds, right? You know, that's a byproduct. But and fasting isn't about being spiritual leader. It isn't about gaining man's favor, right? To say, I'm better than everybody. Fasting isn't even about gaining God's favor, but fasting is about drawing close to God. It's about getting so close to Him that there's this deeper hunger in you. They identify this deeper hunger in you beyond the physical to the spiritual need for Him. And that constant need for physical hunger reminds you of that need for Him to show up in your life and for you to show up to be present with Him. See, the truth is He's always there. We're the ones distracted. The truth is He's always there wanting to feed us. He's always there wanting us to give us good gifts. And we're so distracted about what is going on. Timothy Keller, all those things are about God and not are all about us and not about God, those things that I just talked about. But God's heart is that we want to be close to Him and connect to Him. Timothy Keller, a pastor and author in New York City that I like a lot, he says it this way when he describes fasting. He says, ultimately fast simply because we want God more than we want anything this world has to offer. Isn't that beautiful? Like, that really, we give up food in this world so we can connect to the thing that's more real than anything that we've ever experienced already. We touch, right? And we think this is super tangible. But we know deep down that we have a soul, we have a spirit, and it's aching all the time to be filled by something larger in us, by the God of the universe who loves us beyond reason. Now, the way I like to say this is fasting is all about allowing God to meet the deep hunger in you that only He can satisfy. See, fasting is all about allowing God to meet the deep hunger in you that only He can satisfy. Whenever our hearts aren't to encounter God when we fast, we miss the point, and fasting becomes more about dieting or personal, satisfaction. And that's at its best. And at its worst, it's about spiritual arrogance and elitism. So often, our hearts can go awry if it's not to focus on God. Now, one of my favorite kind of passages in the scriptures is John 4. And John 4 is this story of Jesus he walks from place to place, he goes from place to place, and as he's going to place to place, he sits down at this well right around noontime, and his followers kind of go on. Apparently, it's noontime, right? And so at noontime, everybody goes to what? Eat. It's lunchtime, right? So they're going to get food, they're going to do that, and Jesus sits down at this well. And at that time of day is not the time you typically go to the well. Like, it was hot and it was hard work, and all of a sudden this woman shows up, and you've probably heard this story, this woman at the well, and this woman gets into this dialogue with Jesus, and Jesus begins to say, like, hey, I'm thirsty, can you grab me a drink of water? And she's like, well, you're not supposed to be with me, like, we're not supposed to be associated with each other. And they go into this beautiful conversation about how Jesus says, like, hey, we can get a drink of this water, but we're going to have to come back to it again and again and again. But I have water that's this living water, this eternal water that will fulfill you up to the full, and we won't have to come back and drink. It's like this spring that overwhelms us. It's this deeper thing. He's saying, like, look, there's the physical. We can just get it. We're thirsty and we need a sip, or we have this deep thirst that we need fulfilled. And so they go into this conversation about how much Jesus knows the depths of her heart and her soul, how He knows who she is. He says, bring me your husband, and she says, I don't have a husband. And she's like, great, you've had 5. And so she's like, whoa, how do you know everything about me? And they have this deep communion and relationship with each other in a minute. And what she does is she runs off to the people, and she said, like, look, I know a lot of people in this town, in this city, has known me physically. I've given myself to many men in this town. But she says, I know somebody. I know somebody I just met, and he knows everything about me. He knows me to the deepest part of my soul. And this is what God wants to do when he shows up. He wants to reveal who you are as you draw close to him. He wants to give you an identity and show you his love. And identifying that thirst and addressing it and pursuing it, to ask God to give you that, is this thing that is always overflowing. It goes on to this in John 4:31. It says, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. So his followers come back from apparently going out to Taco Bell or wherever they were at. They were headed out to get some food. And so they come back to him. They said, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. Isn't that a great line? Like, Jesus has all these great lines. I have food to eat that you know nothing about. And then his disciples said to each other, could someone have brought him food? They're like, did somebody stop by here and just drop him off a hamburger, a cheeseburger, fast food? What's something to go? And he says, no. He says, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and him to finish his work. See, Jesus is like, no, my food comes directly from God. My food is being fulfilled, my soul and my spirit, because I'm going directly to God to connect with him, to live life with him, to follow him, to let him fill me up and to do the work that he's called me to do. I'm just listening for the next marching orders. A little over a week ago, about a week and a half ago, I was probably going through the roughest time in my ministry life. It was super exhausting, and we had all these decisions to make about the future. We merged with the church, and we're moving into kind of West Cleveland, and it's been really good, and yet I just feel like there's all these questions. And as I was thinking back on everything, I started to see myself distancing myself from God. I went on vacation about a month ago, and ever since I've not wanted to hear from God. And I didn't want to hear from God because I was tired of him telling me what to do. And not because he doesn't speak, because he does speak all the time. And I was tired of doing what he wanted me to do and not feeling like it was enough. I was never it was like, okay, God, you called me, you gave me this vision, and I'm living into it, and we're walking with people, and lives are being changed, but there should be more. There should be more. This isn't enough. And so I eventually, I was keeping this to myself. I was avoiding God at all costs. Right? I just didn't want to hang out with him, didn't want to talk to him, because I knew he was going to ask me to do something, and I know I'd do it, and then there would be something good from it, but it wouldn't be enough. And so I began to, I finally just kind of dumped this all on my wife one day, and she's awesome, and began to help me process through it. And she just said, you need to spend time with God. I'm like, I know, I'm trying to avoid him. Don't you get this? And she's like, no, you really need to spend time with God. And so I went to the lake in Cleveland, where I always hang out, and to spend time with God, to kind of focus. And sat there with my phone, the Bible app, and my journal, and I sat there, and I felt like, I sat there like a pouty kid. I just sat down, crossed my legs, and got all angry. All right, what are you going to do? You want to do something? You kind of show yourself if you want to do this. And as I sat down there, I felt the breeze blow. And this could just be an internal dialogue. I don't know. But it led me, the breeze blew. And I was like, oh, okay. Yes, it does feel like I'm just chasing after the wind. There's this phrase that comes over and over again in the book of Ecclesiastes with Solomon. And Solomon in this point of his life is pretty bitter. He's kind of bitter with life and kind of down and I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I can identify with this. You want to go there, God? Let's do this. I act like I'm turning the pages, but it was scrolling and let's do this. And so I begin to sit down and read the verses of Chasing Through the Wind. And I'm like, yeah, everything I'm doing just feels meaningless. It feels pointless, like the chasing of the wind. And it goes through this. I just looked up all the verses just from the top to the bottom of that book. And it's seeking wisdom. Wisdom in and of itself is like chasing the wind. I'm like, I know I've got so much wisdom. I've been to talk to so many people, learned so much about situations and church planning and pastoring and education and theology. I know it means nothing. It's chasing wind. I'm like, check, Solomon, I'm with you. This is working well for me. And I go through the next one. It's toil. It's chasing of the wind, work and toil, what you do tangibly. It's just chasing me. I'm like, yes. I'm like, this is how I feel. And I'm amening my bitter soul at this point, right? And so I'm going through this and verse by verse, and talks about, eating and enjoying things is just like chasing the wind. And then it gets down to another time of talking about it, and it just says, all these things, toil and eating and celebrating and work and wisdom, are all meaningless chasing of the wind without God. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks that God was telling me, like, look, like, if you think it's meaningless now, why don't you try doing it without me? Like, you want to go that route? Like, everything, that there's good, and that there's purpose, and that people are experiencing God's love through what you're doing. Like, don't you want to just draw close to me again? It became this moment, I'm like, okay, God, we're on speaking terms again. And we began to talk and hang out. And God just each day gave me gift after gift, these gifts of grace of people speaking encouraging words, or me confessing to like some people in our church and just having them come around. Because being the lead guy of a church and a lead couple, like Rob and Bethany, it feels, as much as people around you and love you, it just feels like you're isolated and on an island, because you're trying to figure out what God's saying, and you're trying to love everybody and move people into that picture of where he's leading you. And so it's the most lonely place. So when you get in front of people who love you and confess, like this is what it was, like this gift. They loved us and cared for us and walked with us. Each day, God just been giving me these gifts, one after another. And it's like God saying, like, I know I have food for you that you know nothing of. If you really want to feast on me and not the things of the world. If you really want to feast on me and not just accomplishments, you just want to feast on me and not just the things that you get. If you want to be with me. I'm sure like that the smell of popcorn, the stuff's going on right now. Who's got like hunger in their stomach and their being at all, right? You're like, give me a latte. Like I need something. Having a caffeine withdrawal, whatever. It's this constant reminder and ache that we need something deeper than just the physical. And when we identify that, God, we need something, it drives us to prayer, drives us to the truth is, in and of ourselves, we need something outside of us to sustain us. I think there's this one guy I read, he talked about how even the minimalist fast, like he tried to give up tea for his milk from his tea. And so he said, like, for a season, I'm just going to give up, that's it, just milk. And he said it was so, like, it broke him so much. It broke him so much thinking that he could control himself and control his life that he, like, within like 3 or 4 days, like, I must have milk in my tea. And he said that cup of tea was the sweetest and most bitter cup of tea that he's ever drank in his life, because he realized how weak in and of himself he is. See, when you fast, you have to rely on God's power, God's grace. It's a gift that he gives to you as you fast. You're saying, like, I need you to sustain me. You take your affections off of food and you put it on him. You're saying this deeper hunger, please feed it. And he always, always does. Now, when you don't eat, you become grumpy, like my kids. You become the worst version of yourself, right? Right? Well, maybe you've been doing the church thing. Maybe you've been a part of the church forever. Maybe you've been walking with people and or the church for a long time, and you just kind of go through the motions. You read the Bible, you pray, you do those things, right? Like I do the things. I come to church, I check off the scorecard, but I don't feel this connection to God. And you start to become kind of bitter and cynical and grumpy, right? You're spiritually grumpy. That's because your spirit, your soul hasn't ate in a while, right? It hasn't feasted on what God really has for you. God has food that you know nothing about. He's got living waters that will well up if you come to him and trust his spirit to guide you and lead you and give you what you need. Now, in this series, Closer to God, we've been talking about how you can grow closer to God. And they've talked about these inner kind of meditations, or inner pathways. I'm getting tired, okay? I'm with you. I want a caffeine shot right now. Meditation is hearing God's, you guys laid this out, that meditation is hearing God, and prayer is conversing with God, and study is knowing God. Well, fasting is feasting with God. It's coming to him and taking these things. I don't recommend you start to fast if you're not doing those first things. If you're not trying to hear from God, if you're not in his word, if you're not trying to do those things, you're not trying to pray and converse, going to fasting is you're dieting. You don't even know who you're going to. At this point, you have no concept. You're not giving God anything to work with. See, God needs those references of who he is. So when he speaks, you know it's God's voice and not your voice. When he speaks, that you know it's not just your next best idea, but God deeply is feeding you through that hunger. See, I don't, you don't all have to fast. We're not religious about fasting, but fasting is this gift, if we embrace it, of having deeper communion, of feasting with what God has for us. Psalms 34:8 says this, taste and see that the Lord is good, right? Isn't that a cool verse? And whether you're a follower of Jesus and you're far from him, God wants you to come to him and taste and see that he is good. If you're not a follower of Jesus and you're just coming for the first time, or you're just trying to hear, this is the first time you heard that God loves you, even in the midst of your sin, your brokenness, and your junk, even in your rebellion and all the ways that you've hurt people and people have hurt you, that God said he loves you so much that he gave his life for you, that he would do anything to bring his kids back to him, and he has good things and good gifts. Maybe you feel like Aaliyah or me sitting and pouting, that we're going through the fridge trying to look for, God, you didn't give me something good. Where's something good in here? I want something to eat, But just like my daughter has a father who says, I love you, and I'm going to take care of you. I'll meet your needs. We have a father who says, I love you, I care for you, I want to meet your needs. One last quick story and we're done. One of the greatest gifts that God's given me over this last, couple weeks and a half was I fasted on a Monday and then Tuesday. Fasting just to really get close to him, and God, I just want to hear from you again. And the next morning I wake up with a kid plastered to my leg, you wake up and when your kid's stuck in bed with you, you're like, oh, fricker, what are you doing there? What are you doing? Get off there. Get off my leg. But I just oh, it's Leah. And then I had this, maybe it was God, maybe it was me, but I just had this conversation with myself internally, and I said, yeah, I heard, this conversation go, do you love her? I'm like, I love her, of course I do. And he said, why? And I said, well, because she's beautiful, she's fun, she's awesome. I got all these reasons why, but the truth is, it's just because she's mine, right? She's mine. God gave her to me. She's my child. And then God says, do you love me? And I said, yeah. And he said, I want you to love me like that, just because you're mine. He says, I love you. You're mine. No matter in your brokenness and your crap and your junk, you're mine. And I want you to love me in response to that. Aaliyah loves you because you love her that way. And you can love me. So whatever you're going through, if you're far from God, taste and see that the Lord is good. If you're cynical and skeptical, taste and see that the Lord is good. If you're in a rut and feel broken, taste and see that the Lord is good. If you're spiritually hungry, taste and see. If you want to know how to fast, just a real quick and simple way is, one, put it on your calendar. Put it on the calendar. Put it up there. If you don't make the date that you're going to do it, you won't do it. And the other thing I noticed was when you put the calendar and decide how many days you're going to fast, immediately there's something that gets in the way of saying you should fast. Meaning I decided to fast on Monday, and I was in my office. Usually there's nobody in there, but there happened to be another lady in there volunteering for another organization, and they're brought over a plate of brownies. Oh, would you like a plate of brownies? And if I wouldn't have decided, I literally woke up that morning saying I'm fasting today, I'm ready, God, I just want to be close to you. And would you like brownies? I know food that you know nothing of, those are delicious. And so it's no, I'd say no to that. So put it on the calendar, and God gave me more gifts throughout the day. Again, I wouldn't have had I believe that a gift was Aaliyah the next day. I wasn't turning God's arm to get that. It was just a gift that he gave me. And also keep it secret. When you do it, just keep it secret. Keep it amongst the people. If you're fasting with a group, biblically that's all over it. We're fasting for God to speak. to us. We're fasting to draw close so God gives us the next thing. Or we're fasting because we're mourning something that we've lost or something that died. But the heart is we're drawing closer to God. You can do that individually, but keep it secret. Keep it secret. Keep it safe. Lord of the Rings nerds, you'll appreciate that later. And the other one is all about grace. It's all about grace. Even when you're in those moments of needing something to do it, you can't strap yourself up or chain yourself to a door. You can't do it in your own strength. I can just beat it. I can beat my hunger. Nope, you cannot. You cannot beat your hunger, but you can change your affections. So you can divert your attention to God's love and God's grace for you, and he'll begin to give you what you need. He'll give you what you need to sustain that. He'll give you the strength that you need that you don't have. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for who you are. God, I pray we just grow closer to you and we become hungry for your love for us. God, if anybody's here who doesn't know your love, that it's just a free gift. You don't have to fast to get it. We don't have to fast. If this is the first time they're stepping in the door and they feel like you don't love them, you love them infinitely. And you would only go to the ends of the earth, but you went to the ends of the earth to hell and back to bring them into your family, to draw them close, to hold them like a father holds a daughter, like a father runs after a son to bring him back in. So God, I just pray you do that in our hearts right now, whether we've been walking with you forever or this is the first time we're doing that as we draw closer to you, we desire deeper and more food, that you have a deeper hunger in our souls and deeper craving. May you just fulfill that as we draw near. In your name I pray. Amen.